This episode is sponsored by Squarespace. Whether you need a domain, website, or online store, make your next move with Squarespace. At the end of last year, I did a video with Joshua Jackson where he talked us through how he went about getting his first book of photography published. And as useful as the information he gave us was, I understand that a lot of you aren't yet in the place where you can start to approach publishers. In all honesty, I'm in the same boat as you. I don't think my photography is yet at a level where it's worth going in a proper hard-covered monograph photography book. I don't think I've worked for long enough, and I definitely haven't worked for long periods on consistent photography projects that actually have a message that need to go in that sort of book. So I don't think I'm a very enticing prospect to a lot of publishers. I definitely have ambitions in that direction, but I also know I still have a way to go. So instead, I decided a few years ago that I would self-publish a book of my own photography every year. And I did that for two reasons. And one was, yes, to be able to post it onto my website, hoping that people would buy some copies and that would help with a little bit of income. But more importantly for me, I just wanted to see my photographs in physical printed form in a book that I could put on my shelf. And that book would then serve as a record for my progress as a photographer, but also as a sort of visual diary for the things I saw in that given year. So maybe you've been thinking to yourself that you'd like to see your images in some sort of physical format, a book or a zine, perhaps just once off, or maybe you want to start producing these on a regular basis off into the future. And you could be doing that for your own records, or maybe you want to give them away as gifts, or you want to sell them to an audience, or perhaps you just want that physical portfolio that you can hand over to people when showing them your work. And I think over the years of putting my annual book together, I've learned a lot. And in this video, I'm going to share a bunch of advice about how you can put your own book or zine together. So let me start by telling you a little bit about my annual book. I actually don't call this a book necessarily, and I'm not sure really where to position it. I've sort of struggled with that ever since I produced these. I would say that it's less substantial than a proper monograph photography book, obviously, but it's also a little bit more fancy than a zine. So I always call this a fancy zine or a little book. It's somewhere in between the two. As I said before, this is an annual book, and the rule I set for myself is that the photographs inside were taken within that 12-month period. I can't pull stuff from the past to pad it. So it is only 12 months of photography. And throughout, I've also peppered it with quotes from videos that I made in the saved 12-month period. So it really is a good representation of what happened in that year. And I set myself the task at the beginning of this book that I would put 90 images in each book, 45 black and white and 45 color. And now, having done this for a few years, I've realized that 90 images in any 12-month period that are worthy of going in a book is a very ambitious target to set. That target really pushes me. I mean, I don't know how many images you get in a single year that you're really proud of, but I really struggle to get 90 great images in a book every year. But it means that I have to force myself to go out more often and to shoot more often so that I have more to choose from. Honestly, if I did it over again, I would probably aim for between 40 and 60 images. And if you're just starting out, I would recommend somewhere in that range is a good number. It will feel substantial enough if someone purchases your book. 40 to 60 images is a very normal number of images for a monograph even, but also it will mean it's an easier target to reach. You can definitely whittle that down and have just the stronger images in there. But for now, I'm sticking with the target I set for myself. The way that I go about getting enough images to go in the book every year is to set myself a series of targets. So when we're not in lockdown like we are now, I try and go out 2 or 3 times a week to take images. And then of those images that I take, I post one image to Instagram every single day. Now, they can't all be great. There's no ways I can get a great image every single day to post, but it forces me to keep shooting. It forces me to keep sharing and getting some feedback and understanding what I have. And it means that if I'm willing to share it, there's at least something interesting about it that I think has some potential. And then at the end of the year, I can take 90 of those 365 images that I really like or have something interesting about them and take the best of those to go into the book. And then the top 10 of those images, of those 90 images, become prints for the following year. So there's this kind of funnel. I go out and I take thousands of images and I whittle those down to 365, which have something interesting about them that I share on Instagram one a day. That then get whittled down again. The best 90 of those images go into the book and whittled down again. And the top 10 of those 90 get offered as prints for the following year. To date, I produced 3 annual collections, 2017, 2018, and 2019. And there's no specific theme to these books. It really is just a case of whatever that year happened to offer up is what went in the books. And the reason that I like that is over time you can see an organic progression in my photography. I wasn't trying to just focus on one thing and limit myself. It's whatever I happened to see or whatever subjects I was drawn to in any given year, that's what went in the book. And today, I'm releasing collection 4, which is the images I took during 2020. I'll be honest, I was a little worried about this year's collection because of COVID restrictions. In this country, we've been on some level of lockdown for a good 5 or 6 months this year, which just meant I couldn't shoot the way that I normally do. I couldn't go into the city as often as I wanted. I couldn't travel. I mean, I had loads of travel plans this year that I was excited about and was thinking about how to put a lot of varied imagery, a lot of different sort of looking stuff in my collection this year. But because all that travel was cancelled, it meant that I had to get creative and go to the park around the corner, or go locally around the streets here, or shoot from home and try different things. But I was happy to find that when I put this collection together, looking at the images, I really think it's one of the strongest collections I've put together to date. And the fact that I don't make these themed or lock them in too hard meant that I could be that flexible, and that this year's collection could just be whatever this year served up. And I have to say that the results are something that I'm very proud of. The way that I start building these collections is that I just have a folder on my desktop. This one was obviously labeled Collection 4. And throughout the year, I'm looking at those images I'm posting on Instagram and working out which I like more. And as I see, okay, I really like that one and the response to it has been interesting, and some surprise me. Sometimes those responses actually alert me to something I've missed in an image and it's better than I thought or worse than I thought. And I then take those images, the better ones, and I put them in that folder. So I'm slowly putting in maybe 200 to 300 images into that folder throughout the year. And I don't look at it, I just keep adding to it. And then around November, I go into that folder and I start looking through those images with fresh eyes, having had a little bit of time distance between when I took them and when I'm now viewing them again. And I then take maybe the best 110, 120 to 140, 150, and I put them in a separate folder that's now the better of those images that I can start to look at and work out which will be the final 90. Once I've whittled it down to that smaller batch of stronger images, I then want to see them printed physically. So I go on to a website like photobox.com where you can just order cheap prints online. I'm sure loads of places around the world do exactly the same sort of thing. And I get that whole batch, that whole folder printed small like this. And this is pretty inexpensive. I think this cost me £18 to do the whole lot. And it's really money well worth spending, because I find that being able to physically sequence those images and to be able to move them around and work out sort of what goes next to each other and what goes where is much easier to do than trying to rearrange little files on a folder in a desktop. So I would recommend that if you're putting your book together, get those prints done physically so you can actually see them and lay them out and work out what order you want them to go in. Sequencing just describes the order that your images will appear in any given book as you flip through the pages, paying special attention to when 2 images or multiple images will sit side by side or with each other in an open spread between 2 pages. And sequencing is essential. I think it's as important as making sure that the correct images go in your book. Having the right order and having a beginning, a middle, and an end, and making sure that that sequence flows will be what makes that book a good book. It's asking yourself questions like, when your reader picks up your book or zine and they start turning the pages, what journey do you want to take them on? Where is the beginning of that journey? Where's the end of that journey? What's the progression? How will this develop as they flick through? And when those images appear next to each other on a page, is there some theme which connects them? Some theme in terms of the imagery or the subject matter or the color scheme or something about them that just makes them work together? Because having that flow makes it a much more pleasurable experience to read. In my collections, I start with 45 black and white images every time with quotes in between, and then move through to color in the second half of the book. And in this year's collection, in the color section, I start in daytime and move through to the nighttime, and I have that flow through those images. And I can't tell you how important that sequencing is. I take a full day of laying out those prints and changing things around, going away, coming back, looking at it with fresh eyes, moving things around again until everything snaps into place. And that time, spending that time properly, always makes it a stronger book. When it comes to design, my best advice to you is don't cut corners. It amazes me how many photographers out there also think that they're brilliant at design, but trust me, if you're not sure, get some help, because I think that bad design can ruin a book as much as bad sequencing can. So it's well worth getting the right person to help you get the right look for your book, someone who really knows what they're doing. Personally, I have a very talented designer friend who put this book together for me based on my brief of wanting it to look very crisp and clean and stripped down, like the videos that I do on my channel. And he put together this very minimal design, which looked very simple to do, but I know it's not, because I tried it myself and made a real hash of it. And he was able to just produce something that looked really quality, really classy, and really stripped back. And now all I need to do is, when that time of the year comes and I've made that selection, done that sequencing and chosen those quotes, is I bundle everything up together, put all the digital files together, all those text files for the quotes, and I send them off to him, and he puts those images and that text into that template. He prepares the print files for me and checks them over, and then he sends them off to the printer for me. So it's great. The whole process is done properly. And having spent so much money on the printing, it's great to know and have that peace of mind that it will come out looking great every single time. If you don't have those design skills yourself and you don't necessarily have the resources to pay a designer, my next best suggestion would be to go online and to search for photography zine templates or photography book templates and download some of those and work off some of those, because designers have put those together. Or go to websites like Blurb, which will print for you, but they also give you templates to put all your stuff into, actual book templates that they've predetermined and worked out that you can just basically plug and play. And yes, your cost per book is going to be higher, but it also means you don't have to pay for those design costs, and you know you won't make too much of a mess of it. The most important thing I can say about your design is make it your own. Don't copy someone else's design. This is your opportunity to make the design and the images that you're putting inside all feel like a cohesive whole. So whether you're putting that design together yourself, or you're briefing a designer, or you're choosing a template, try and find a design that speaks to who you are, the sort of images that you produce, what sort of subject matter you're playing with, and what you want to say, and make it all together feel like you. When it comes to printing, it's really going to depend where you are in the world, how many copies you want to order, and what your budget is. In my case, I use my designer friend. He has contacts with corporate printing companies, and we use them. But the only reason I do that is because I order in bulk. So I always order way north of 1,000 copies, and that makes it cost effective. But I understand that for most of you, you're not necessarily trying to order in huge volumes, and so you might need another solution. So I did some research for you. If you're based in the UK, I'm going to recommend a company called XYZ, and I'll leave a link to their website down below in the description. But the reason I think they're great for photographers is they have a load of experience printing photography books, and specifically zines. They have a whole page just dedicated to photography zines where you can go, load up your information and get your personalized quote. And they'll also do huge print runs if you want them, but they'll do tiny print runs of a single copy if that's what you're looking for. So they're going to suit photographers of any budget and any print run size. I reached out to them before shooting this video, and I asked them if they would send me a few of the zines that they produce for other photographers. So they sent me some samples, and to me they all look great. In fact, you'll probably know some of the photographers that they've already produced zines for. And I did ask them about international delivery, and they said yes, they do that. So if you did want to load up your files and have them delivered to you overseas, that's absolutely something you can do. It might be more cost effective for you to find someone local to you, and that's just going to be a case of you jumping online and doing some research. One of the most important things to think about when printing is choosing your paper and printing process. And it's really important to get samples from whichever print house you choose. So I asked XYZ to send me theirs, and these are their samples. And you can see the reason this is important is because each printing type, each paper type, treats colors slightly differently. So whether you're using uncoated paper, or you're using a gloss, or you're using a satin, you need to pay attention to how it's treating the colors in each of those images. And you need to try and think about what is that process going to do to your images in particular, and how's it going to treat them. So taking a close look at samples like this and deciding on the right one for your particular zine or book is a really important part of the process. So remember to ask for samples. Personally, for my collections, I use about 150 GSM uncoated paper because I just love the feel of it. I've been a big fan of magazines like Rucksack and Serial and Ernest Journal, and these are magazines that make great use of this uncoated paper, and I really love the feel of it in my hand when I'm holding it. There are trade-offs with uncoated paper. It does mute your colors, it desaturates everything a little bit and sort of turns your black to a kind of charcoal. So that means that when I'm putting my book together, I know that that paper does that. So I'm compensating a little bit. I'm crushing the blacks down just a little bit more. I'm boosting the saturation just a little bit more because I'm anticipating what will happen to my images when they're actually printed on that paper stock. But personally, I really like the way that having that paper treat those images the same way is almost like putting a filter over the top of everything you're doing that brings everything together and gives it a bit more synergy. But you do need to be aware of those trade-offs before you choose that as a paper stock. Every paper type has its pros and cons, and that's why that sample pack is so important, because if you decide to go the gloss route, you'll definitely get those richer blacks and more saturated, vibrant colors, which might be right for your images, but you're also going to get that glossy look on the page. So if you're holding it in bright sunlight, for example, you're going to get that light reflected back to you off your images, which personally I don't like to see. So you're going to have to balance all these things against each other and get those samples in hand, look at them in different light, work out what those papers do to those different images to work out which paper is right for you. I need to say a word about selling your zine if that's the route that you're choosing to go, and that's why you're putting these together, because I know so many photographers who put together what are honestly great zines and then they just get so discouraged because no one is coming to buy them. I think a lot of us have this kind of field of dreams mentality. You know, if we build it, they will come. If I put this zine together, people will come and buy it. But in my experience, that just isn't a realistic approach, and we need to think about it better than that. And I'm not saying this to discourage you. I'm saying this so that you can set your expectations properly. If you're a photographer who hasn't yet built a following around their work, either online or locally in the real world, then the chances of you going out and ordering 500 copies of a zine and putting them on your website and just hoping to sell them all isn't going to happen. If people aren't already visiting your social media and website on a regular basis, how will they even see what you've posted up there? Photographers often go the self-publishing route because they know that they get to keep 100% of the profits. And if you get your book published, you're only going to get a percentage of the profits. But there's a reason you get all the profits as a self-publisher. It's because all the work is yours to do, including the marketing. It's not good enough to put the zine together, to post it onto your website and just hope people will discover it. You have to do that extra work to get that work out there in front of people so they know that it exists, they get excited about it, and they want to put their money down to buy your work. Different things work for different photographers, and you'll have to work out what works for you where you are in the world, and you might have to get creative. But for some photographers, they try online ads and they work. Some other photographers I know use local stores in their area. They ask them to stock their zines and pass on the profits. And that works especially when you're doing photography that features your local area and you know people might be interested in. And other photographers work online to build and generate interest around their photography and then point people from their social media accounts, for example, back to their website where they can buy physical copies of their zines. That last one is obviously the one I chose to try and build interest around my work online and then point people back to my website to buy my zine. And that's why I can get away with this design, because think about it. If this was sitting on a bookshelf in a bookstore and I asked local stores to stock this, no one is buying this because it's just too generic. You have to know what this is and you have to know who I am to even be interested in picking this up in the first place. And that's why you have to think strategically about what you're going to put on the cover, where you're going to put this book, how you're going to entice people in, how you're going to get them interested in your work enough to give you money to buy it off you. It's good to keep in mind that when you're self-publishing, the whole thing is your job from start to finish. That's why you get to keep all the profits. That means, yes, all the photography is yours, that's obvious, but it's also things like all the writing is going to be yours to do. The design is going to be yours to either do or organize, organizing all the printing and paying for that, getting it all delivered to you, then working out what packaging are you going to use, how much are you going to charge customers for postage on top of the price of your book, and then doing things like dealing with returns and lost books and complaints and customer service. All of that is your job, so keep that in mind. Personally, I find the whole thing really rewarding, and I like the fact that this is a business where I get to sell my work to people who like it, and I find it incredibly rewarding, even the frustrating parts. But it is good to keep in mind that all of that stuff is going to be your job and your responsibility if you go the self-publishing route. So I hope that information's been helpful, and I look forward to seeing what you come up with and your zines that you're putting out into the world. And from my side, as I said, Collection 4 is now live on my website. I'll leave a link down below if you want to go purchase a copy. And just a warning again, these are limited editions, so I order a set number of these every year, and once they're gone, they're gone. So please don't wait. I always have people in the second half of the year asking me for copies. hoping I'll do reprints, and sorry that they missed out, but unfortunately I don't do that. So make sure if you are keen on a copy, you don't wait and you grab one now. And just to thank you to those of you who do buy these every year, I'm increasingly proud of these as they come out, and I'm really happy with the quality over time and the progression. And every one of you who buys one of these, you're the reason that I can keep this channel going and I don't have to go back and get a day job. This really helps me pay my bills for the year. And thanks again to Squarespace for sponsoring this episode. If you need a new website or an online store, I've used them to sell all my collections over the last few years, and it couldn't have been easier. It really is the last step after the photography and the design and the printing, is to then load that product up onto my website, and it only takes me 10 minutes to load photographs of the product and a description, to set the prices and the delivery options, and to set that live, and it's ready for people to purchase. And I can then sit back and watch the orders come in. I can see who's ordering, I've got their delivery addresses, and then I've got their contact details. So when I get the tracking number, if that book is going out internationally, I can just plug it into this little form and they get sent a nicely formatted email including all their tracking information. Setting up an online store was honestly the part of self-publishing that I was most nervous about, because I assumed it must be complicated. But using Squarespace, it was really easy to put together. Building the store took no more than an hour, and adding products these days takes minutes at most, and it all just works.
Start your free trial today at squarespace.com and go to squarespace.com/Sean Tucker to get 10% off your first purchase.